Hello, my name is Mark Taylor and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place for creative and inspiring learning from around the world. Listen to teachers, parents and mentors share how they are supporting children to live their best authentic life and are proving to be a guiding light to us all. Hello and welcome back to the Education on Fire podcast. Now, since March 2020, of course, the whole world has changed, and for the education sector, having Edtech companies allowing children to learn remotely and for schools and teachers to be able to set work has been invaluable. And today I get the insights of CEO of Satchel, Naimish Gohil, and he's going to talk to us about his experiences and the insights that he's gained over these last few months, which hopefully will give us guidance into what could really help us as we start our new academic year. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the National Association for Primary Education, who continue to support this show, for which we're incredibly grateful. And I just wanted to let you know that on a recent podcast episode I produced for them, I interviewed Beth Tweddle, Great Britain's most successful gymnast, and she has a new online program which is being launched ready for the autumn. So please go and check that out. If you go to nape.org.uk and just click on the podcast tab, you'll see all the podcasts there, and you can get all the insights and lowdown about exactly what's possible and what's available to you through the Beth Tweddle Gymnastics. But today we're going to be talking all things EdTech with CEO of Satchel, Naimish Gohil. Hello Naimish, thank you so much for joining us here on the Education on Fire podcast. Tell us a little bit about Satchel and exactly the sorts of research and some of the data that you've come across since this COVID crisis is starting.
Hi Mark, thanks for the opportunity. So it's just been unbelievable usage from our perspective. So Satchel is a learning platform that's used by 1/3 of all secondary schools in the UK. And since COVID-19, we've just seen exponential usage. We have more or less 1 million daily active users at the moment. And that's been consistent since the lockdown, particularly when we had the announcement of the school closures.
Tell me a little bit about the way people have used it. Have you sort of found that it's been different because of the circumstances, or have you found that it's just been more people being online?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both things really. And what we have seen is teachers have certainly accelerated how they're using Satchel One much more throughout the school day. We used to see patterns where we used to see a lot of usage after school, but what we're now seeing is actually significant usage throughout the school day. I mean, if I give you one example, I think during the first 2 weeks of the lockdown, we had teachers set approximately 53,000 classwork tasks in the early hours, literally at 6 o'clock in the morning, compared to what would be 2,000-3,000 on a normal week.
So one of the things that we've noticed a lot as I've talked to people in recent weeks, it's kind of the way that the whole sort of tech industry from an education point of view is likely to morph or change or expand once we go back to school in a more normal fashion. And do you think that teachers' experiences of using these products in this particular recent times is going to change the way they're going to do it moving forward, or do you think it will return to some kind of normality or a combination of the two?
I think what this crisis has showed us is how proactive teachers have been in terms of embracing technology. Prior to COVID-19, you could argue that you had a number of teachers that were potentially on the fence. However, what COVID-19 has done is really accelerated teachers embracing technology. And I think for a lot of teachers out there, they've probably been surprised themselves at how impactful technology can be. And like with most things, you sometimes have to take that first step forward. And I think that's what we've seen. And so I believe when things, return to some kind of normality, we will see teachers continue to use technology in ways that will help them to teach better, to be more efficient, to reduce their workload. Whereas in the past, they may have, stuck to their old ways. Whereas now that they've experienced this new world, I don't think we're going to see that fall by the side.
I think it's very true, isn't it, that a lot of what was going on before the schools lockdown is it's very hard to change because you're in a routine, whether you'd like it to be different or there's new products and ideas out there that might help you. That the effort and the energy that's needed to do that is something which kind of just gets moved a little bit. And I think because everyone was forced into this situation, everyone was just suddenly looking around for what are the options and what could be happened. So do you think, from your experience, you've got the same number of people on your platform but just using it more, or because of the fact of your recent success with all your awards and things like that people were actively looking for something new to use to make all this happen online, and that you've gained much more customers as well?
Yeah. So during the initial kind of scramble, when we initially had the announcement of the school closures, we saw lots and lots of new schools come on board and subscribe to use Satchel One. Then as things have started to calm down, we've certainly noticed a drop in terms of potentially new business. Whereas what has happened is existing users have been using the product more and more and have been using more and more of the new functionality that we've introduced during COVID-19. So it's been a bit of a double-edged sword, because historically for us, this period is the busiest period for us in terms of new schools and new business, new schools joining Satchel. However, I think it's understandable that schools today are making do with what they have, and dealing with other fires at the moment, which naturally take a precedence in the current climate.
And so I guess that really depends on, like you say, some of the systems that were already in place. And we were chatting just before we started recording about our own children, and because of the ages and because of what the school had in place, all three of my children have sort of had different experiences in that scenario. So do you feel that maybe some of the companies that have been in the market for longer will have gained more because they will have had the chance for just more users, like you say, using more of the programs and things that they've got?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think if you've already been embedded within schools for a long time, then I think it's better than the devil so to speak. And so we see schools will be making do with what they have versus thinking about subscribing to new tools, especially during those early days of COVID-19. I think what we will see is as there becomes more and more clarity in terms of when schools are going back, what the expectations are, I think we will start to see school leaders start making decisions again and planning for the next school year, knowing they have a much more clearer picture of what the lay of the land looks like.
I completely agree, and I think one of the things which is going to be really interesting is like you're saying before, that there's the initial firefighting and the better the devil kind of making do, making sure that there's something in place, which I think as an education industry, if you like, has been fantastic all the way across the board to be able to just suddenly have this happen and get as many children still learning from home has been remarkable. But I think there has to be a little bit in the back of everyone's minds, this might happen again, even if it's only small parts of a lockdown, or actually now we've done some remote learning in different ways that we've never done before, that actually there's some real benefits to this. And I think what leaders and heads will do is they'll start to think, now if we're going to have to implement something in case, or we want to implement something because we can see the real benefits for this, that's when, like you say, people are going to start to look around and really get an idea of what's out there. And I guess that's really, that highlighting is going to be really something you can make the most of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, from our perspective we've been in education since 2011 now. We've been through crisis situations like this, maybe not as severe, but one of the things that we found is the most important thing is to just be supportive, empathetic, and be available for schools and for school leaders that we work with. And so that's really what we try to do, even though we may be, we may not have hit kind of our targets or our aspirations. We know that by continuing to be empathetic, provide value, over time we can continue to partner with these schools as they come out of the other side.
And I think that there's so much about these things where it's interesting looking back, isn't it? The fact, being an industry leader and being able to speak at various events, like I say, having a company that's been around for a few years, having people on board and having all the resources and all the technology in place. You don't know when that's going to become a real benefit, but like you say, to have all that expertise to support everybody is such a great thing to be able to do at this time.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I think that's always been a key to us. I think, in education, if you want to build a brand, you have to have a very long-term view. So, it's not always obvious, but we support, nearly 1 million users every single day, but we also support students, parents. So, when people get stuck outside of school hours, we try to provide that support because we know that that's when help is needed. And so you need to be responsive, you need to be proactive. So we invest a lot in terms of not just the software side, but the service side. And I think that's really helped us over the years.
So let's talk a little bit about exactly what is available for people. Obviously, there'll be some people listening who use Satchel already and are fully aware. But for those people that maybe are coming to it for the first time, tell us about the scope in terms of the resources you have, the programs you have, and how schools use you.
Okay, so typically what we provide is essentially a lightweight learning platform, and what that basically means is if you're looking for something, a simple tool to help you with distance learning, remote learning for your students, for you to be able to keep parents in the loop, then we provide a really simple solution that allows you to do it. So typically, not a common use case is you will have teachers, they will set some classwork or some homework. This could be assignments, spelling tests, quizzes, and they will set that piece of work for a class or for an individual. And then once that piece of work has been set, those students can either do that online or offline or submit that piece of work. And at the same time, we give parents a bird's eye view so they know actually what homework, little Johnny has to do today, tomorrow, the following week, so they can be more informed in terms of how what the workload is and how they can best support. So it's particularly useful, if you have, we have children that have dyslexia or special education needs, but it just means that as a parent, you have all of that information in one place, and so you can support your son or daughter with all the relevant information without, having to find out or look through their bag and find bits and pieces. And so that's a typical use case. And of course, we save teachers lots of time because as you start to get department members within the department using the product, then everyone saves time, because if you created some work, Mark, I could reuse it. If I created something, you could use it. And so you end up building a library of resources that everyone within the school can use in order to save time. And so, we do other things as well. Of course, you can do messaging, so you can send notices and messages about events or whatever it may be to keep everyone in the loop. But fundamentally, it's a really, really lightweight solution that you can get up and running literally within a couple of hours to help you with distance learning.
And so that's a very different standpoint than the kind of some of the companies and some of the systems that are in place, which basically run the entire school network in terms of payments for things and just lots and lots of diversity going on. And I guess that simplicity is something which is a real benefit when you're just trying to get people to adapt a new idea.
Yeah, and I think if you come from the teaching world, there was a famous saying, I can't remember who quoted it now, but it was, consistency leads to outstanding outcomes. And one of the things I find with technology is you have to really design, you have to make products useful and accessible for everyone across the school. If you just focus on those power users that are like IT or tech users, then what you're going to do is you're going to have pockets of technology used within the classroom or within the school, and then you won't be able to embed it. You won't be able to create the routines and that consistency. And I think what we've always tried to do is focus on making it super simple for everyone across the school to use it, so you don't have to be, an IT whiz or a technical expert. That's really not the point. Technology should be a bit like electricity, or if you press the light switch and the light turns on, you don't need to think about how it all works. You know that if you press it 100 times, the light's going to turn on 100 times. And I think that's where we really try to focus on building products that are just simple to use, a bit like Ronsil, does what it says on the tin. You can without having to worry too much.
I think that's really important, and I think it's something that we could all recognise these days, is the fact that as the technology gets more advanced, we don't know all the implications of how it works, but as a user, we just want to know how to use it and the fact that it will. And it sounds it's like it's that sort of thing that we do. The old days of having a car that used to break down every weekend that you used to then fix yourself to get you going the next week is way gone now. You open your bonnet to your car and there's so many computers and so many things in there that you want it to be reliable because it has to be that way. Otherwise, it needs to be taken somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then teachers, as we all know, right, are under immense pressure, and they just don't have the time. I think, I've heard some reports and read some articles where pointed out that teachers are not working as hard as they should be. I mean, from what we're seeing, teachers are going above and beyond, and it's been incredible to see how our teachers, who are on the front line, providing education in very difficult times, who are also parents, so they're having their own challenges at home. But by and large, we think our education force have done fantastic. And the data and the usage that we see as we work with 1 in 3 secondary schools is a decent sample to go off the back of.
I think you're right. And I think the one thing which I think is slightly worrying for me a little bit, in terms of we're now sort of early mid-July as we're recording this, and it's the fact that sense of, and now we're getting back to normal, I think just can't be true. There are too many variables, too many things have happened, too many things need to kind of slowly and surely morph in order for any kind of normality to sort of come back into place. And like you say, that's related to learning, it's related to family situations. It's the fact we've been through such an important and difficult time for people will take a little bit of time for it to kind of work out of our system, even if it seems to be heading in the right direction. And I think being aware of all of that is really key. And I think, like you said, if you've got systems in place and you've got technology in place that works, and you can just keep that regularity moving forward and supporting people in terms of time, then that's going to be a very positive thing, especially as we start to hit September and October and the autumn term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you're spot on, because I think we're definitely in for a few more surprises, aren't we, unfortunately? I think it would be naive not to think that there's going to be some difficult times ahead as we approach winter.
And I think that's one of the really important reasons why I've been keen to have these kind of conversations as we've moved on through this crisis, because I think awareness, understanding, people having options, and just not having to just visit a website and think this looks like a great product, but to hear the people behind it and the understanding. And I think one of the most important things from a Satchel point of view, of course, is that, you started in education. You didn't come just from an IT field. So tell us a little bit about that, kind of how it all got together, and where that kind of education and technology sort of morphed for you decided to create a whole new project.
Yeah, so I guess, I've always been a bit of a geek. So, I come from I did computer science at university. And then once I'd graduated, I ended up working for a software company in Lisbon. And then I kind of got fed up of that because I was vegetarian. And so, of course, Lisbon's great for seafood and so forth. But yeah, after eating sandwiches at the Marriott Hotel for about 14 months, I decided it was time to come back to London. And so, yeah, once I'd come back to London, I ended up doing some voluntary work within a school. And so this was a time when the government were really pushing the kids to learn more about DIDA, CIDA, and using tools like Macromedia, Flash, Fireworks. And unfortunately, there just wasn't that many, there wasn't that much IT knowledge available in terms of teachers who could do that sort of thing. There was a real shortage. And I always kind of loved working with kids. And yeah, my experience in school wasn't very good, which I'll come on to later. But yeah, I thought I got really excited, and that's what prompted me to do my PGCE. So I ended up doing my PGCE that year at the Institute of Education, and then within a short period of time, I ended up getting a job as a director of e-learning, which is essentially a glorified job title for a head of IT managing myself in a school in West London. And then when I was there, I was part of the boys' school. So there was just the boys' school, and within a short period of time, I had managed to kind of transform the results at that school from kind of very low, GCSE results to like 80-90% within the space of a year. And I didn't really do anything that was like rocket science. What I did do was open up the classrooms. We had all this technology, and prior to my arrival, all of the computer rooms were always locked up. And so the first thing I did was just open all the computer rooms. We created breakfast clubs, lunchtime clubs, after school clubs. And yeah, I just tried to kind of inspire the kids and get them to learn more about the stories behind the products and services that they would use. So things like, like this was a time when like Farmville was like really popular. It was one of the games from Zynga on Facebook. And so I'd often tell the stories, kids, about, the way these companies started was based from the back of a garage or inside a garage. And I would use that to kind of inspire the kids, to kind of teach them to use tools like Scratch and animation. And yeah, ultimately, those were the things that really made a difference to our results. But ultimately, that gave me the idea to start looking at kind of what I could do to improve technology within our own school, because as part of my remit, I was in charge of implementing a learning platform that was so cumbersome and so complicated to use that, I'm a geek and I found it hard to use. So how could I expect, 50 teachers after school to learn how to use this? And, ultimately, as I became an assistant head teacher across my school, and as we became part of a federation, I became an assistant head teacher across the boys' school and girls' school. And that's when I started to think about building something myself, because as part of my remit, being part of the senior leadership team, I had to implement technology across the two schools. And so, yeah, that's when I just started coding in the morning, coding in the evening. And I knew that I couldn't build a learning platform. So I really started off focusing on what was the one pain point that teachers, students, and parents always complained about, and that was homework. And so that's when I first created our first product, which was called Show My Homework, which has now morphed into, Satchel One, the learning platform.
And what I love about that is the fact that these things come from real life situations. You're not just sitting down thinking, oh, what can I do next? It's actually solving a problem which you're dealing with every day. You're seeing it from the front line. You've got the experience on both sides in terms of education and the IT side as well. And I think that's so important. And it really, I think from a modelling point of view, to see the students being able to see that, and for staff to see that, and for you to understand it from every side, I think is really, really interesting. And I can really understand then why it becomes so successful, in terms of, just like you say, it's a pain point, it's something that needs solving, but it has that kind of almost kind of like an overarching idea of exactly where it fits into the world that it sits, rather than just solving a particular issue.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think, like in education, you can't just have whizzy technology. You have to, sounds obvious, but like you have to solve problems, because teachers just don't have time. And I think not only do you have to solve a problem, but I think it's really important that you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes, especially teaching and education. You have to really understand that world in terms of how you speak, have an appreciation for what they worry about, what their day looks like. And I think it does make things much easier if you've worked in that world. Yeah, absolutely.
And you talked about your sort of professional experience within school there, but tell us a little bit about your sort of experiences, maybe when you were a bit younger, or any particular teachers that made a really big impact on you.
Yeah, I spent I went to a school in East London. I grew up in East London, and when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a footballer. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out, and I ended up getting all lower letters of the alphabet for my GCSEs. I remember that day vividly. When in those days you used to get a brown envelope with your results, and
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've forgotten that, but that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and I was terrified. I was terrified about going home. But normally, as soon as you get your results, you then have to go to college. And then, of course, or I say go college, but you have to go to the college or the sixth form to go and enroll with your results and pick a course. And of course, knowing that at that time everyone was doing A levels. I didn't know anything else, but I couldn't do A levels because I didn't get a C grade in maths and English. And so, I was dreading I was dreading what I'm going to tell my parents in case I didn't have any course to go on to at college. But in those days, luckily they ended up taking me on board, and I did something called GNVQ, which in hindsight, I don't think it was it wasn't very difficult. But that's another story. But going back to your question, I would say it was definitely my form tutor. I'm still in touch with her, Miss Rayson. She is still a fantastic influence on me. And the thing I always take away from school is I had a lot of love and empathy from my form tutor over that period. That was I always remember that, how important it was I knew that I could, no matter what the situation was, she was always very supportive and empathetic towards me, no matter what I did. And you never forget that.
It's something which comes up time and time again now, and it's beginning to really awaken me to the key elements to what education is. And you're right. There are tools, there are subjects, there are key things that you learn, but the real magic happens when there's a real connection between people, and that can be peer to peer, it can be teacher to pupil, but it's that kind of, I see you, I understand you, let's decide what it is that you need. And that could be absolutely anything. But I think when you realise that we're human beings relating to each other, then you can make the most of the situations that you're in, good, bad, or indifferent. And I hear this over and over, and I think that's where real education comes in. And I think one of the things which I love more and more about talking about technology within education is the fact that if you can free up time to give teachers more time to be able to do that human to human side, that has to be a real benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the magic of teaching. You can help shape young minds and the future of tomorrow. Even when I used to teach, I mean, I still go into schools now and again, and I'll do assemblies, and that's the thing I love most. Like, you see how kids develop and grow. And I mean, I see this in my staff now. We've got a lot of our staff at Satchel have not hit a home run before. There's a lot of rough diamonds, and I've got some of my team have been with me for like 7 years now, and it's been so wonderful to see that those folks like continue to grow, evolve. And the only thing that we do as a company is give them opportunities and encouragement and confidence. And I think, yeah, I see that in me when I was growing up. Miss Rayson, or my form tutor, that's what she consistently did. Just encouraged me, gave me confidence, and yeah, that certainly left a mark.
And I think that really comes across. And you only have to look around your website, and one of the things which is striking is the fact that you're talking about your values and some of the key things that are important to you as an organization. And that to me just makes me think, like you say, we're not talking about just tech, we're not just talking about giving you a service, we're actually talking about not human to human as in teacher and pupil. We're talking about an organization as a group of humans trying to support a whole world within the education sector to work on that level. And it comes across from what you've been saying, and I think it comes across in what you're providing as well.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I mean, education, you need a long-term view. And, for us, it's, our tagline is, together through education. And, we hope we can be a partner for school leaders, for parents, for students, as they are going through their journey on education. We hope that we can help them in some way or form. I always like the idea of, when you think of like, search, you think of Google. When you think of like shopping, you think of Amazon. I hope that one day we can be synonymous with education. But that's a long-term goal. Like there is no quick flip or quick win in education. You need a long-term mindset.
Absolutely. And tell us, what do you think was the best piece of advice that's ever been given to you, or maybe a piece of advice you'd now give your younger self looking back that you think would be supportive for everyone?
I come from a very working class background. My dad worked in a mattress factory for many years, and then he worked in a supermarket. One of the things my dad always told me was education, education, education. And he said, just work hard, don't take shortcuts, and eventually things will fall in place. And, I think sometimes I see today, people are always trying to rush, get to the destination, always trying to kind of look for shortcuts, when actually you just have to embrace the journey. And there are going to be difficult times. There are going to be difficult challenges ahead, but actually forcing yourself to persevere and get through those will put you in good shape. And I think, I always have seen my dad work, long hours for a continuous period of time. Like we're not talking a month, we're talking like 10, 15, 20 years. And he still works really, really hard. And so that kind of that work ethic has really instilled in me. And I think even now, as I look at our company, like we really don't care about what university you went or what your job title is. Everyone needs to kind of roll their sleeves up and work hard and treat people with some, with respect. And then, if I was to give myself, the younger me, I would say, well, I'd say three things, right? Take the plunge earlier. So whatever you're passionate about, don't be afraid to take that first step forward. It's a bit like riding a bike, when you first start learning how to ride a bike, or you want to learn how to ride a bike with no hands, it's going to hurt because you're going to fall a few times. You don't know how much it's going to hurt, but unless you're willing to go in that unknown and feel the pain a little bit, you'll never be able to, feel that feeling of riding a bike with no hands. And so you just have to go for it and not be afraid to fall. The second thing is, save more money. I wish I wish I had some more financial guidance when I was younger. I think it's really important to save some money, or get in that mindset where you're always saving some money for a rainy day. I think that's important at a young age. And the third thing is just, trust your gut. Some of the biggest mistakes I've made is when I've not trusted my gut. The spidey senses, the things that tell you in your mind. I always regret when I don't trust my gut. And so, don't be afraid to listen to that voice in your head and action it.
I think that's so right. I think we're all here for a purpose. We all have an innate understanding of what's important to us. And I think it's that intuition, it's that gut feeling, it's that knowing somewhere that's a guiding light sometimes. And I think you do ignore that at your peril. Just to finish off, is there a resource, a podcast, a book, a video film, anything which has had a big impact on your life, and why was that?
Good question. I would say, is it okay if I say 2 books?
Absolutely, of course.
Okay, so the first book is by an author called Dale Carnegie, and it was a book, it's a really famous book, but the book's titled How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the title, it doesn't really do it justice, but what it really taught me was how to train yourself to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And that is something that takes a lot of time, effort, and training. And it's not something that you get taught at school or university, but it really, really helps in any situation when you force yourself to put yourself in the other person's shoes before you take any kind of action. And so, that's something that has really taught me a lot, that book, and I'd highly recommend it. And the second book is more of a business book, but it's called Predictable Revenue. And it's a book by a guy called Aaron Ross and Mary Lou Tyler. And that book is really a playbook for anyone that is thinking about building a business and selling into institutes or selling into businesses or schools. But it really focuses on the discipline that you need in order to kind of consistently build a business that can grow. And there's so many valuable lessons in that book. And literally, I can't take any credit for myself, but I try to apply all of the lessons that we learned through that book into our business. And that made a big, big impact on the success of our business. Because, I don't, as I said, I'm a first-time entrepreneur. I don't come from a business world. My family doesn't come from a business world. So it's like, learning learning on the job, so to speak.
Absolutely. But I think one of the most amazing things, and that's one of the reasons, the driving forces really for me started the podcast, was that just sharing this information, sharing these resources, having conversations about how these things have affected different people and their different situations and how you can make it happen. All this information's out there. It's just a question of being exposed to it and then using your intuition in lots of ways to kind of draw the bits that you need and then grow from there. So I think that both of those are fantastic, and thank you so much for sharing. So let's finish off. Tell us where people can find out more about you so they can take a look at exactly what it is that you offer.
Yes, so please visit teamsatchel.com. We've got lots and lots of information there about our products and services. Now, actually, one of the things that we're doing right now is we're introducing something called Satchel Classes. So it's a pilot where we're essentially running a whole number of short classes that last no more than 20 minutes that are focused on a single value proposition where you can subscribe to a class on how to become a lawyer, on learning the ropes of simultaneous equations, whatever it might be. We're trying to provide a series of structured classes with teachers, with professionals that last no more than 20 minutes, but where you can really get a single takeaway from the class. So there's a short pilot. We're just testing it. We're not sure whether we're going to continue it or not, but we've had some fantastic feedback so far. And yeah, if that's something that you want to enroll for your son or daughter, or even for yourself, then please check it out.
Sounds like a fantastic opportunity, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Naimish, I really appreciate you spending your time and your expertise and your understanding of not just us here in the current situation, but a very wise and bright future. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information of each episode and to get in touch, go to educationonfire.com. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.